Let's wrap it up.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to episode number 18 of Observe and Rapport Show. Feel free to share this with all your friends. Subscribe to my newsletter, the Observe and Rapport newsletter. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, all linked in the bio below. Thank you.
Oh my God! Wait a minute. I forgot. This is so important. Music, stop. No, this is so important.
If you've reached this part of the podcast.
Yeah, wait. Okay, thank God. Listen, okay. Quick story.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 18 of the Observe and Rapport Show. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined as ever by my beautiful co-host, Keith Sullivan. Keith, how we doing today?
Couldn't be better, pal. Couldn't be better.
Always.
I'm doing a lot better than Andrew Bushnell, I'll tell you that.
Andrew Bushnell, tell me more.
He lit himself on fire today.
Okay.
In protest of the...
How'd that go?
I don't know if he's dead. I don't know. I saw the video, because I've mentioned on this show 100 times now that I like to watch people get their heads cut off sometimes.
Yeah.
And the video, the site has plenty of those videos that I go on, and it obviously had this one. And yeah, this American Air Force soldier, I don't know if you do know about this or no?
No.
You don't know anything about this?
Most normal people do not.
So, well, it's all over Twitter right now.
Okay.
Like, it's blowing up because, well, I'll get into the reason why. But so anyway, this guy, I think his name was Andrew Bushnell. It could be Andy. I don't know. I forget.
It's really important that we mention his
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's dead. I don't know. I don't think he is. You know, you'd think it would be absolute, but it actually takes a long time to burn to death if you're totally engulfed in flames. It takes a minute. And he was only there for a while. So real quick, the guy...
Probably only takes like 45 seconds, honestly.
No, it doesn't. He starts... Listen, it takes a minute. It's torturous. He takes his phone, obviously, and he's like, I'm whatever, Bushnell, and I'm in the Air Force, and I'm in protest of the Palestinian conflict, and we need to free Palestine, whatever. And then he just dumps something flammable all over his head right in front of like some military base that he works at. He's active duty, full uniform.
Is it a U.S. soldier?
U.S. soldier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in America this happened, and I'm pretty sure. And he lit himself on fire, and then everyone starts flipping out, these people around the security guards, police, and they put him out. I think they put him out before he ended up dying, I'm pretty sure. But the funniest part of all this, and this is going to directly tie into what I want to talk about today, because I don't know if I told you, but I figured out the problem with the entire world, Keith.
Did you?
Yes.
And you're going to light yourself on fire
No,
today.
he's part of the problem.
Got it.
And no, he's not. The reaction to what he did is the problem. So
Wait, so the war's not over?
No.
He didn't end it with lighting himself on fire?
No. He what in this name of martyrdom, no, he did not.
Darn.
But he was so close. It was all the elites were like, wow.
He had me going for a second.
Yeah, no, all the politicians were and the elites were like, we really should, but I need this war to go on. I have the summer house, the college tuition. I just can't. I feel bad for the guy.
I got Raytheon stock,
Hey, it's business.
Yeah.
It's not, So the thing is, though, on Twitter, someone put a picture of him and it says "rest in power," right? And someone said, "Can we please not use that expression for him? It's supposed to be reserved for black people," right?
Oh,
because
boy.
I think. But honestly, I thought that too. I thought that was just...
I've actually never heard that phrase.
Rest in power was like a George Floyd thing.
Okay.
And but even like the power thing with the thing, right. That's a black thing.
Yeah. And
so everyone's upset that you're going to say that about a white man. How dare you? Whatever. The bullshit, typical modern day, whatever. And so you can literally light yourself on fire and die potentially for the cause. But the left will still hate you if you're a white guy. At the end of the day, you're still the problem. So you can literally light yourself on fire, and they'll go, well, you're still part of it. Someone literally said...
Well, what was his motive? Yeah.
Right. Someone literally said, can we not use that expression when talking about a white man? And he
Have
said...
we looked into his past? Yeah.
Yeah, and they go, a white man who's also in the military, hello, problem. And it's like... It's just so funny that and that's okay. So this is going to take me into what's going on.
You solved the problem.
I figured out what's wrong with the entire world.
All right.
Okay?
Here we go. Let it plan.
Did you happen to listen to Chris Williamson's episode with Eric Weinstein recently?
I did today.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you today? Great. It's fresh in your head.
He's also, by the way, Eric Weinstein, he's brilliant, but he talks so
He's very like
cocky and
it's
sure of
almost like
himself.
he acts like he's the last person who's ever going to talk.
Yeah,
Every time he's talking,
he's very like
so serious.
He's not like it almost is demeaning. Like
it is.
Like he's talking down to.
It is.
But he's smart enough. Oh yeah.
It's okay. It's still. I'm just. This can even be in the episode. Me checking the camera. I really don't care. But
I feel like he's smart enough that I give him a little leeway there.
Yeah. So I thought that when listening to this episode too, but then I started to realize something about what he was saying with the theory of everything. It's kind of like his famous thing.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, dude, if I figured that out, I'd be a little cocky too.
Yeah, I guess.
But the thing is, yes, I get what your point is with him. So in the episode, Chris brings up, I don't know if we got here yet, the Abilene paradox. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I forget what it was.
So the Abilene paradox, in my opinion, it's really not a paradox because I'm really fascinated with this scenario that he describes. So I actually went way deeper into the social psychology of that whole thing. I started reading papers and essays and looking up data points and all this stuff on this particular subject. And I realized that it's not really a paradox. What it really is, in my opinion, is a peculiar intertwining of two already existing examples of social interactions that could become contradictory depending on people's behavior. So the first thing is what's called a collective fallacy, and the second scenario is something called preference falsification. Now, let me just get through the Abilene paradox. So the Abilene paradox describes a scenario where, let's just say you're a marketing executive and your job is to pitch ideas about a product in a meeting, and people either agree with the idea or they don't, and then you pursue the idea.
Right. He used the Bud Light example.
Exactly. So right. So let's just say you're this marketing executive, and you go one day, I'm going to think of an idea that everybody likes. Right now, this is where I went into my own kind of research about it. How can you or anyone have that thought or feeling like everyone's going to like this idea? Consciously, you don't know this, but subconsciously, there are these settings in society and they're either low trust environments or high trust environments. High trust environments are when you and your wife are in the kitchen. You can say things to her that you can't say to a pal even, maybe. When it's just the two of you. Or if you're having beers in a garage with your friend, you'll say things that you would never say at work or in church or in a lobby of a hospital, whatever. It's just different social scenarios and settings that it's and the trust can vary depending on who and how many people you're talking to.
Right.
So
you censor yourself depending on the environment you're in.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So having that thought really just means, well, the meeting is a low trust environment. If I pitch out an idea, people will be very less likely to speak out against the idea in fear of being, called out or, or just being the Manchurian candidate, just standing there all by yourself. It's a scary feeling.
It's actually, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
I know you're on a roll, but Jeff Bezos brought this up, almost this exact same thing, of the reason why when he's in meetings, because he's literally the most powerful man like on the planet.
Yeah.
He has a rule that he does not speak first in the meeting because he knows about this kind of like falsification fallacy where if he speaks first and says, here's my idea, everyone in the room, if you're a low-level executive at Amazon,
no one's going to say
no. No one's going to be like, hey, Jeff, I think that's pretty stupid. So he actually has a rule that the lowest level or lowest ranking person speaks first, and then they go up.
Right.
And his like goal basically is to almost say nothing in that meeting. He wants everyone else to make the decision, and if he disagrees or agrees, he wants that conversation to fester without his involvement. Mm-hmm. So he's very aware of that. I'm sure there are instances where he's just like, no, fuck you, I'm Jeff Bezos, of course, and I'm going to do this. But like, it's cool that he's aware of that.
And a brilliant guy like him would figure out a way around this, and that's the only way, really. So let's get back to the paradox scenario. So you show up at the meeting knowing this all subconsciously, and for example, let's not use the Bud Light thing. Let's just say it's an athletic clothing company, and you come in with let's just go for it all. It's an Indian Muslim paraplegic whose parents are dead and they're gay, like whatever. They're going to be the spokesperson of this clothing line. and everyone has their feelings about this, but they don't want to be the only person to speak out against it. They thought athletic clothing company, we'll get LeBron James or Gronkowski or someone like that. But like, this person makes no sense. But I don't want to be the only person to speak out against this because I'm going to get called a name, and I don't want to take that risk. So I'm just going to agree, right? Now, what was the original goal here? The original goal was to find an idea that everybody likes and pursue the idea. But what ended up happening is an idea that nobody likes got approved, and now we're pursuing something that nobody wants to do. Now, the problem is cell phones, okay? And the cell phone is connected to the internet, and it films in 4K resolution, 60 frames per second, and it's always charged 100% almost, whatever it is all the time. No one's phone is dead in their pocket. So now the world is a low-trust social environment, right?
Another guest that Chris Williamson had on his podcast is this guy, Gurwinder Bogle, who I love. Like, he has one of the best Substacks, and like he's very tuned into like all of these different paradoxes and fallacies, and he basically publishes, I think every year he publishes like 30 new thought structures, and they're very punchy, right? They're like little one sentence frames of like, here's how to not fall into a certain psychological trap. And one of his tweets, which I'll read, he says, "If people are afraid to say what they really think, they will instead lie.
Yes.
Therefore, punishing speech, whether by taking offense or by threatening censorship, is ultimately a request to be deceived." So you're actually, when you're afraid to say something, instead of like speaking out, you're essentially asking just to be deceived, where like you're not actually accepting, no one's actually confronting the truth. Like in that room, no one is saying what they're actually feeling. They're all lying and basically deceiving each other.
Right.
It's almost like groupthink.
Yes.
Right? Or bystander fallacy or paradox. I don't know what it's called. Bystander. Well,
that's what I mean. It's not a paradox, because like paradoxes to me are much more direct.
Bystander effect.
Yeah.
Right. Like if someone falls when you're at a crowded stadium, no one helps them because everyone assumes someone else is going to help them.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Like, and it creates these echo chambers of one ideological thing where, like it's whatever the most virtuous idea is. Let's just push that. And I'm not saying it's Palestine, Israel, whatever. I don't really, it's not, it's very complicated, but like people can become very obsessed now with these things, and they may not even actually feel this way. It's just like you got to think over time, as it compiles, how many things are we pursuing as a species that we don't even really want to be doing? Like, if this is always all the time now.
I mean, that's basically like Twitter, right?
Right.
Like, how often, think about before phones existed, you could wake up and just go about your day. Maybe you'd read the newspaper and get pissed off about a few things that you saw in the newspaper. But now on Twitter, you can open that at any point in your life. Or you're going to the bathroom, or you're walking to the bathroom, see a guy light himself on fire, see someone throw spaghetti at the Mona Lisa, and see
someone get mad at him because he's white, getting mad, and you're like, wait,
and you see all of these things, and you're getting mad, your blood pressure's rising,
right?
All on your walk to the bathroom. That previously, it's like shit that you normally wouldn't give a shit about. If someone just came up to you and said, "Hey, have you hear about this?" You'd be like, "Yeah, whatever." But now you have the ability to click on that video, watch the video, read the comments,
right? Send it to your friends.
Send it to your friend. Like, start a conversation. Go down this rabbit hole of something that you actually don't really care about.
Right.
You're just like, you're inflamed by this one thing, and now you're attached to it.
Inflamed, good.
And you can get on to like 40 different things like that in the span of an hour.
Right. So my point is, when I said I figured out what's wrong with the entire world, I mean, it's phones. Like, it's just the fucking phone.
That's the
whole
grand
problem.
Finale.
It's the phones. I knew this guy. He was the biggest piece of shit I ever met in my life. Very, very rude, grumpy, but he was old, and he was an asshole to everybody. But he, the thing is, you got to listen to people like that, because he said to me out of the blue once, he said, "I'm telling you, these fucking phones are going to be the end of, it's going to bring on the apocalypse," he said. And I was like, it's just something you have like little chirps in your head from third grade. You remember something the teacher said to you. It's one of those things that I have in my head. I think he's right. Like, and it's not because of any other reason other than that we're now always in this low trust environment, and everyone's afraid to say how they really feel. So all these things that are getting done are being done in the name of this like false virtue, like impossible utopian ideal that's not really reachable, and it's perfect for psychopaths to take advantage of, because people like the guy who was running that meeting, maybe he was consciously aware of what would happen, and he's like, at the end of the day, I don't really give a shit about this person or the brand or whatever. All I know is that my idea got approved, and I'm the one who's going to get the credit, and I'm the one. And they know that long term, this is not even a real resolution to any issue. It's just this ongoing kind of like, no one even really wants this to happen scenario that will just, and whenever the result doesn't come, I'll just say, well, we got to try harder. We got to try harder. And you can see why politicians now would latch on to that kind of virtue signaling and that kind of thing, because it's not like there's any end in sight. And at the end, and it also creates tension in the culture and like whatever. So before phones, this was way less of a problem, man. Way less of a problem. The world, look, and there's nothing you can do about it. Phones aren't going anywhere. The world was getting smaller. It's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. But, you know, it makes me wonder, like, would a reset be nice? Back to like...
Well, here's the thing. Do you think you could live without a phone?
Yeah. You know why? Because I did. For years. Hello?
You lost like 30 phones. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's my thing, too, is like I have good luck.
No, what I mean is like...
now.
Essentially now, your iPhone is an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it has everything that you need, but it also like contains a lot of your valuable information. It has all your photos, your memories, your ideas, your text messages. Like we talked about...
I love 8-Ball Pool. I love it.
What?
The game.
Oh.
You know, it's entertainment. It's everything. Yeah. It's everything.
But like realistically, yeah, you can go back to having like a flip phone if you wanted to. But like,
yeah, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, you kind of need an iPhone if you want, or an Android, whatever the fuck. But like, you need it in some ways.
We've talked about this 100 times. It's there's always an equal and opposite reaction to everything. I mean, we've talked about this, like how many people have been saved by their iPhone, right? They were in a jam and like whatever, and they called the police for them or something. You know, your phone can do those kinds of things, and that's great. And think about the connection, like you said, the memories of my daughter that I'll like. People at work, when I show them videos of my daughter, they're very jealous. They're like, dude, if I had an iPhone, I wish I had a phone when I was your age, because all the baby shit's gone of my kids.
Yeah.
You know,
it's interesting. Like I started writing an article about this idea, and I literally just kind of verbal vomited like out some ideas that I was thinking of. But the gist of it was basically, we live in an age now where when it comes to anything in life, you kind of have to do your own research, and you have to be your own, like, I don't know, police force is not the right word, but you have to you have to police your own behaviors. Let
me cut you off 1 second. You have to police your own behaviors, and I'm not trying to interrupt you, but like, yes, like that's why I did this, because like I'm somebody who, if something's happening, it's happening. Like it's way bigger than me, but at least I can understand it. Like that's why I want to know collective fallacy, preference falsification, these paradoxes, these social psychological situations or phenomenons that can occur when a bunch of people are in a room, or when a collective like idea is formed in like a city. Like, you know, Manhattan has a whole tone and a vibe. Like when those things happen, things get out of hand sometimes, or they don't, or they go a good way. But like, as long as I know what's like happening technically, I can be comfortable with it, you know?
Yeah, I read Charlie Munger's book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, and Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's business partner and Berkshire Hathaway, one of the most successful investors of all time. And he never actually went to school or studied finance or business. He says in his book, he says, if you want to be successful in any venture, you should spend about 80% of your time studying psychology.
Totally, man.
Right? And he read like...
Gets rid of your anxiety.
He read like 15 psychology textbooks, and he's like, by reading those, I'm basically in the top 1% of understanding human psychology. And if you understand human psychology and behaviors, you can, one, know yourself enough to know what your instincts are, how to avoid them, how your monkey brain plays tricks on you, but you can also notice trends in society.
Yes.
And how large groups of humans behave together, because we have hive minds, and you know, individually we're all brilliant, but collectively we're pretty stupid.
Yes.
And anyway, but to get to this idea that I was talking about was like, you have to be able to know certain psychological concepts to know, with all the tools that we have today between our phones and social media And now with how confusing it is with mainstream media and like the propaganda, and like you can't trust politicians. They're all insider trading and they all have their own, best interests in mind versus the people. And even diet, like you go to the fucking grocery store and it's just 90% of it is junk that is poison you. And fitness, everything's filled on Instagram with all this advice on like eat eggs, don't eat meat, eat meat, don't go vegan. And like you really have to like hone in on your own radar system to inform yourself on not what's trending or not what you're seeing in your feed, but like go back to old like books or old sources of media and psychology to understand, all right, like there's so much being thrown at us today, and you can either use them for good or you can let them take control of your life, like your phone.
Yeah.
Like think about we've talked about it on this podcast, like how many tools you have to use just to like not be addicted to your phone.
Yeah.
Whether it's like setting a 30-minute limit on social media or putting your phone on grayscale or turning your notifications off, and like all these stupid things that unless you go out of your way to do it, you're just going to be controlled by your phone.
True.
And like, going to like parties or social functions, like everyone wants to serve you alcohol, serve you dessert, serve you chips, serve you like junk food. And you have to try to be disciplined or know yourself enough to be like, no, I shouldn't eat that. And like, but everyone else is going to be like, well, why aren't you drinking? Well, have some cake, have some cookies. And you're like, no, I don't want to. It's not healthy for me. Or, and like you have to almost be different.
Yeah.
And set yourself apart and like learn your own ways of like, if you ever brought up like, if you have back pain,
sure.
People come out of the woodwork.
Oh,
when you have back pain,
like,
everyone comes out. Oh,
they jump on you.
I have this trick, or I have this tool, and it's like everyone thinks they have their own ways, but like you have to do your own research. You know, what
it's
I mean?
like the Greek maxim, "Know thyself." I mean, maybe that's another spin on it. Like people are not even individuals anymore; they're just part of the groupthink. They're part of the the collective, like the collective fallacy or the preference falsification, whichever you want to call it. They've just like kind of like fallen into that, and they don't think for themselves anymore. They just do what they're supposed to do, or they just avoid saying the wrong things all the time. And like, it's just an interesting thing that we lived in a world, man, where people just used to say how they feel, and now you just can't, and now you just. Or at least you have. I mean, it's like when like Dennis Leary has a funny joke about when smoking was getting banned in restaurants. Like he does this whole bit where he's like hiding under a bed and like there's a helicopter over his apartment looking for him, whatever. And it's like, it's gotten to that point, but with speech now, like you can't just talk about the social problems and like one argument versus another, unless you're like in your garage with a pal and you turn your phone on airplane mode or something. Like it will eventually get a little 1984 like that with Big Brother, and like it will eventually get to that point. But like, this is all coming up also because I saw Chuck Schumer recently. Like this is really what kicked it into the whole
in person,
gear.
like a good friend.
Yeah, I was talking. We were having lunch, and no,
that's how it sounded.
I saw him saying, and this is so crazy, man. But I swear, they asked him about Joe Biden's mental decline and whatever, and like cognitive decline, and
this is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
So he goes, I've known Joe Biden for 30 years, and I talk to him once a week, at the minimum once a week. And he goes, he has never been more cognitively capable. He has never been more sharp. He's a leader. He's in control. He knows everything. When we put things in front of him, he coordinates and leads. And like there's all of the bullshit about him being. He didn't say bullshit. All the stories about him, his cognitive abilities declining, is all right-wing propaganda. He said. Now, here's the problem with that, dude. Politicians used to lie about normal things, like 9/11 and your vote counts. Normal things, saying things like that are ridiculous because you understand, though, because as a citizen, you're like, fine, the country's huge. It's way out of my control, this whole thing. You go ahead and take the reins. There's enough trust in the lie for me to just go, fine. Mm-hmm. But now Chuck Schumer's telling me, you didn't see what you saw.
Yeah.
You didn't hear what you heard.
Yeah.
That's all not true. It's disregard reality.
Well, that's what
Disregard.
Yeah, that's what Eric Weinstein says on the podcast. He's like, imagine if a oil tanker flipped over on the side of a highway.
Right, exactly.
And exploded. And as people are driving by, there's a police officer that just says, "There's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Right.
It's fine. Everything's under control."
Right.
And you're like, "No, but what happened?"
But I saw this huge explosion.
There's people burning. There's children on fire. Like, what's going on? How can we help? Like, nope, everything's fine. It's under control. Go.
And
along.
you're just like, but
And you're like,
no,
yeah, but
it's
no,
not though,
yeah.
because I'm looking right at it.
I thought that was a really good analogy because
I didn't even hear that part, to be honest with you, because listen, man, listen, Joe Biden is fine, whatever. I don't even care about the guy as a politician like that. It's just that, dude, like the guy is walking around the room looking for people.
There's just video
looking
evidence
for
of it,
people
yeah.
who have been dead for 10 years. Kyle,
Did you see what happened? I don't know the full.
So wait, let me just wrap this around
Sure.
to the point, please.
How you figured it, the whole world out?
The world is my oyster now because Keith Sullivan, Long Island, figured it out. Now, but the thing is, the politicians again they're not taking into consideration the cell phone, the iPhone in everyone's pocket. Like, dude, that video of him falling on his bike.
Because everyone's fucking 80 years old.
Well, yeah,
They're
but they don't exactly. Imagine trying to explain this to Grandpa. Like, but that video of him falling on a bike, you know, that was filmed on an iPhone, I'm sure. Like that kind of footage, there's so much of it because of the phone, and they're still playing this game where they think we don't see what's going on because, you know, they think it's the 90s. But dude, like, they gotta listen. We gotta stop with this. Like, at least be better liars. I mean, don't tell me that I'm just not seeing what I saw.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's why I think I've talked about it, but that's why I love Reddit, the website.
That's the best website on the internet
because to me, like, even for something as simple or innocuous as like an Amazon review, when I go to look at the other day, my hands were really dry, and I wanted to get some lotion for my hands. I went on Amazon, and there's, you know, obviously a billion different freaking lotions you can get, and like they're rated, and that you can get it tomorrow, you can get it in 3 hours, whatever. You read the comments, and it's just a sea, and like you read the comments, and you're like, all right, are these people getting paid for these comments? Like, was this a friend of the person who made it? And you're like, you don't even trust those comments necessarily. Yeah. You go to Reddit, and you type in like best moisturizer, and you get user accounts from like Betty from, you know, Wyoming, and Jack from Mississippi, and like all these people who are like, yeah, I had dry hands for 30 years and here's what worked for me. So you're actually getting like true, like real life stories.
Yes.
And like people are commenting back and like asking them questions, and like you're getting real life stuff versus when you try to go through the sea of the internet. You know, if you just type in best moisturizer on Google, you're getting ads, you're getting promoted products, you're getting influencers who are writing an article that seems real, but they're actually getting paid behind the scenes.
Right,
like,
right.
There's that lack of trust where you're
that's
just
why.
like,
Well, that's why we love Tim Dillon, because he'll do the ads and say like, "What am I reading? What is this shit that I'm reading?" I mean, like, honestly, drop me. I don't want to read this anymore. But they don't because we respect him enough to like. I bet enough. I don't buy anything on podcast recommendation, but like, though that kind of honesty, people are dying for that kind of honesty, man.
And that's why I love him or hate him, Elon Musk buying Twitter or X now.
It's Twitter, all right?
Yeah,
with the X.
Twitter.
No one's ever gonna call it that.
Everyone just calls it Twitter. Oh, I mean X. Yeah, everyone says that.
I'm just gonna say Twitter from now
on.
But
that's why I love when he was being interviewed by Aaron Sorkin in the New York Times, and he asked him about advertisers, you know, pulling ad spend, and Elon was just like, if you're trying to blackmail me with ad dollars, he's like, go fuck yourself. Yeah. He's like, let me be clear. Go fuck yourself. And like,
hey, Bob.
Again.
Talking to Bob Iger.
Again.
From Disney.
Right. And people, you know, love him or hate him. But that is really powerful in this day and age, because most of these organizations that we've come to trust, like behind the scenes, advertisers are pulling the strings, and like it really is. And for me, I work in the advertising world. A lot of it is, it's not propaganda, but it is incentivizing them to not tell the full truth.
Of course,
right? Because they're beholden to, well, if we say this, then then L'Oreal might pull their ad spend, and L'Oreal's been one of our biggest revenue drivers this year. And for Elon to say, no, my platform is promoting free speech on an open internet, and if an advertiser tries to basically bribe me by saying, well, you know, we're L'Oreal, we're going to spend $1 billion with you this year, and if you don't censor that tweet from that scientist, then, we're going to pull that. And he's like, no, go fuck yourself.
Right.
That's so powerful. And I don't think people appreciate how important that is.
It is.
Because you might hate everything Elon Musk does and says, and he's childish and whatever. He was a prick. You can say whatever you want. That alone, that idea is so important, and I don't think people are putting enough weight on how important that is because it's so rare.
Yeah, somebody was saying that he was recently sued or something by somebody, or he received some kind of what's that word when it's a request that you must respond because the court's
Cease and
asking.
desist?
So whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like he had to answer these people who were suing him, or else it was a legal action.
It's not a cease and desist. I don't know.
Who knows, dude? We're not lawyers, but like he sent back a poop emoji. And what's funny about that is they have to file that. Like it has to be the official response of Elon Musk. It's just like a pile of shit with a smile on its face.
They have to write that in the document.
And he knows that. He knows
sent
that.
back a visual image of an emoticon.
Right. Yeah, man, phones are the problem. We're never going to get out of it, but at least know what's happening. At least know that you're probably involved in a collective fallacy or a preference falsification, not scheme, but scenario where like it's really no one's fault, but just like like you said, when humans get together, we can be really stupid. And a lot of the things that you may be fighting for or believe in, you really don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you just look within, know thyself, for Christ's sake.
It's even like noticing your own behavior. Like you ever go on a plane and the plane takes off, you don't have any Wi-Fi, but you don't know what to do. And you immediately open your phone.
Oh, yeah.
You can't access anything on your phone unless you're playing video games, but you still find a way to like go through your photos or like, just click random apps and open them.
Dude, I'll like check my steps for the week before. Like I'm like anything.
And you like, that's one of those scenarios where it's an impulse. Yeah. And like, if you notice that in yourself, like that's informative.
Yeah.
Where you're like, wait, why am I even looking at this? I know I have nothing to do on this phone because I can't access the internet.
Correct.
Yet I'm still holding it and clicking random things for 20 minutes.
That's an addiction.
I'm just wasting my time. Like, what am I doing? And like,
I don't know.
It's little things like that. But yeah, there's just so many like impulsive behaviors that we like.
Speaking of impulsive behaviors, didn't you read a book about spending money or not spending it or something?
Yeah, so I just read Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. It's one of those books that I'm in this on Instagram, the algorithm. I'm in this like book community with a lot of other guys who read and like recommend similar type of books like me. And this one kept coming up, Die with Zero.
Right.
This guy isn't like a author or hadn't written any books beforehand, but this book was a really interesting concept, and it's a finance book, but it's more of like a philosophy book. And his idea was, this guy, he has no background really in finance necessarily. He was an engineer, and then he got into like trading energy stocks and became like a multimillionaire.
Oh, so he gets money though.
Yes,
he understands.
He has enough money to afford the luxury of this belief, but it's kind of this radical approach of maximizing what he calls your return on life enjoyment. So
this is so important.
It's very important. And when you first open the first few pages, you're just like, all right, is this guy just saying die with zero? Like you want to literally die and be in your coffin with no money in your bank account. Like, so what? You just spend money on trips to Bali and like blow all your money and then leave nothing to your kids. It's not that. He has a very like systematic approach on how to spend your money. And it's actually really smart and something that I think everyone can adopt. The regular model is, right, you work in your 20s and everyone tells you, you got to save as much as you can, put as much of your money into savings for your 401k, into stocks, and, because you want to have that nest egg when you retire at 65.
And I'm one of those people, I heard that and I was like, no.
Yeah. So what he actually says is you should divide your life into 3 different segments, or 3 different areas of your life where you have either time, money, or health, right? So at any moment, you're over-indexing in one of those 3 areas. So when you're younger, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you have the most health. So in that case, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you should maximize your spending on things where your health is the utmost priority. So if you want to do physical activities that cost money, spend all your money. Go skydiving, go dancing in some crazy country, go backpacking, hike Kilimanjaro, like go to Everest Base Camp. Like spend your money however much it is, because you're not going to
You're
have
abundant in that right now.
Like, when you're 65 and you retire, you're going to have enough money to do that. But maybe you have arthritis, or maybe you have a bad hip, and you're not going to be able to do that. So you spent your whole life working and saving your money, and now you can't go hike Kilimanjaro. So what he calls it is memory dividends, which I love this idea. So memory dividends are basically when you do something, so you have an experience of some kind that maybe it was a little out of reach with money. You know, your friend invited you to a trip to Mexico, and you were 21 and you had been working all summer, and you're like, shit, I only have like $700 in my bank account. This trip's going to cost $500. Like, can I do that? But you did it, and you had the time of your life. And 10 years later, you and your friends still catch up over beers. You talk about that trip to Mexico. That's a memory dividend. And every year that goes by, that memory dividend gains interest. And what he says is you retire on your memories. So the most important thing at the end of your life is when you look back, like, what memories did you create with people that you love? So you want to maximize those memory dividends and stack them up. Right. So the way to do that, again, in your 20s when you're healthy, spend money on things that are physical in some way. Then, and he basically, it's kind of a risky attitude, but he says, you're ultimately, as you get older, you're going to make more money. That's kind of a assumption, but generally speaking, based on statistics, that is almost a fact. Like,
that's why it's so silly for 20-year-olds to occupy Wall Street. It's like, it's part of the reason. It's like, yeah, you know, the guy's 75. He's had 50 more years at making money than you. Yeah, yeah. Of course, he has more money. Yeah.
Yeah. So then when you're in your 40s and 50s, you have more money. So now you can do things that you wouldn't have done in your 20s and 30s because it was way too expensive. So when you're in your 40s and 50s, maybe you can, rent a hotel and, like, or go on a yacht with your friends, or like go to some crazy trip that's way out of your budget. Go to Napa Valley, go to the coast of Italy, go, train setting in Europe or something. Because when you're in your 40s and 50s, you have the money. So spend it on that. Those are important memories that you'll have. Then when you're in your 60s and 70s, you have the most time. So that's where you should spend money on things that take a lot of time.
Gotcha.
I can't think of any good examples, but
right.
Golf or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So it's a really smart way, and he goes through this systematic way of, like, calculating how to divvy up your savings and be smart about it. I'm not going to adopt 100% and, like, go all in on this.
Yeah.
Another important thing he said was, well, what about when you die? What, are you just not going to leave any money to your family?
Right. I was going to ask you about that.
And that's also a smart idea. He says, okay, let's say you die when you're 90. Your kids then are 60, perhaps. Now you're going to give your kids let's say $50,000 each when they're 60. They already have a lot of money. Like, what are they going to do with it? They probably already have a house. They've already gone on vacations. They're not really going to be maximizing their
I fucking love this
memory
guy.
dividends. So
Make
what he
your
says
own
is,
fucking money.
He says, based on the, again, statistics, like, your kids will get the most value out of an inheritance when they're in their 20s or 30s. So rather than wait until you die to give them money,
right, buy the summer house at 48.
Yeah. So give them, $30,000 when they're 25 with a purpose. Say, I want you to go travel Europe, or I want you to start a business, or I want you to buy a house, because that's where they're going to get the most maximum.
Dude, love this guy. He's 100% right,
really
in my opinion.
Really
I totally agree with all of that. I mean, I love that. I think that's because it's about time someone wrote a goddamn book about the reality of human experience in life on this planet. Like, your memories are everything, dude. All I do is think about my memories, honestly. Yeah. Even now, I'm always thinking about my past or what I did that one time that was so much fun, whatever. Like, I don't really care about. I need to read that book because, like, it's just like I've read finance books and stuff, and it's all about, like, budgeting and whatever, and it's like, dude, boring.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna die. Yeah. You're gonna die. You need to do something like now.
I'll give it to you after. It's really really good, and, like, he also he talks about how to still be smart, still save, still put money in stocks and bonds and all.
And you do
the boring shit, right?
You do.
You're not gonna be stupid, but
like,
yeah,
realistically, it's
very
not
realistic,
right.
outlook, and I thought it was refreshing.
I agree.
The other book I read that kind of ties into it was David Brooks, who's an author I love. I've read a couple of his books, The Second Mountain. I forget the other one.
You've mentioned him.
But he wrote a book, I think it just came out. It's called How to Know a Person.
Yeah.
So
Saw you post.
Yeah, so this book's all about basically relationships. So you've probably heard about the Grant study about Harvard. In the 1940s, they took 269 men and women from Harvard and followed their lives for decades.
Oh my God.
So they literally tracked like these 269 people, their whole lives from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, etc. Tracked everything, and it was a study on happiness. And
The deathbed thing.
Yeah. Long story short, and like this was a surprise decades ago when the study kind of came out, but they found that the most important thing for long-lasting happiness or fulfillment in life was the close relationships that you have. So this book is basically diving into how do you make the most of your relationships? How do you get deeper with the people that you love and form close bonds? And it sounds like kind of a cheesy book, but it was really helpful because he ties in like so many different sources. And it was really interesting talking about the one thing that I found awesome about that Grant study too was in some of those men went to World War II.
Yeah.
Right? And some of them were not successful, kind of low-ranking sergeants or whatever, but others went on to become officers. So they led, an infantry, or they led, a company, whatever it was. And they tried to find, well, what was it that separated the men who became officers versus the ones who didn't? And it took them like years to figure it out. They tried asking them all these sorts of different questions, and they found the number one indicator for one of those men to become an officer in the Army was that they grew up in a warm, loving household.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow,
because they had the emotional capacity and experience to be able to lead men in different ways and be vulnerable and get deep and yell at the ones who needed it, but be soft with the ones and tender with the ones who didn't, and understand each person individually. So the book,
a lot of emotional intelligence.
Yeah. So the book is very much about, the power of listening and the power of like, what I thought was interesting is he said, people are way more willing to have deep conversations and tell their stories than you think. And when it's true, like when someone, have you ever met someone who like, they just instantly are able to like crack you and like get you to start sharing your story, and like
absolutely,
it's because they're just genuinely interested.
Yeah.
And you want to tell them your story, right? Like when someone actually asks you like a deep question, most of the time you're not going to be like, dude, what the fuck? That's way too personal.
Yeah.
Like most of the time you kind of want to be like, yeah, actually my childhood was rough. And like you start to go into it. And like, I thought that was really interesting. It's like, it's true. We're all kind of like scared. And he said, we all know the most important thing in life is relationships. Like to most of us, that's pretty obvious. Yet the thing we suck at most is relationships too.
You got to wear your heart on your sleeve in this world, man.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going through the same thing. Everyone. I mean, like, I know that some people's lives are way worse than others. That's not my point. The point is we all have struggle. And, I got to be honest with you. I'm not trying to be like, how people are like, I'm an empath and I know how people feel. I'm not. I'm just saying that I am that guy.
Yeah.
That I'll go up to people and just go like, so how was your childhood? Like, because I think that's funny.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the time they'll tell me.
Yeah.
They'll actually open up about that. And
what happens is like, and you've dealt with like terminal illness, right? And like, when you have someone in your life who gets a terminal diagnosis or is close to death in some way, it instantly just reframes.
It snaps
everything.
You out of it.
And you realize like truly in this moment, the only thing that matters is spending time with your loved ones.
Yeah.
Like, so now.
Oh my God, it's so true.
And it just creates this filter where you're like, oh, of course, it's so obvious. Like, yeah, like maybe you hate your family and you're mad at your sister-in-law and like, yeah, your mother-in-law drives you crazy. But when death comes into the foreframe, like all that goes away.
Well, I've got to be honest. I know people who don't speak to family members, and I'm just
crazy.
Like, yeah. I'm like, I will never understand that. And it's not just because my dad's dead. People's dads die, but like
it's usually Italians.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know what it is. The Italians, they
hold
grudges.
They hold those arguments, right? But
I'm just joking. Italians. I'm
no, 50%. Kyle. They can take a little bit of. It's okay. You know what I mean? But Like, my point is, it literally blows my mind. Like, you know, there was a time where someone I knew didn't talk to their dad, and I was like, that can't continue.
No.
It just can't continue. And I'm going to tell you why. Because your whole life, you're going to be going through your life on every occasion, birthday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of it. At some point in the night, you're going to go, I don't know what my dad's doing. Here's what you got to do. Your dad, maybe he's an asshole. Maybe he fucked up beyond, you know, forgiveness even maybe. But the point is, just because someone did something to you, it doesn't mean you have to do it to them. It doesn't mean that you now have to be that way. Like, people have said to me in the past, because I can be very kind to people who are rude to me. And I respond with, just because they're an asshole doesn't mean I have to be an asshole. I'm not going to let their behavior change the way I am. I have no animosity towards this person at all, whatever it is. And they kill him with kindness, kind of. But I think in the long run, a lot of things can just be solved by thinking in long term instead of short term. But like,
that's
everything.
That's the definition
that's
of
life.
Of that
that's
is,
how I figured it out.
That is self-help, just like wrapped in a sentence right there.
Yes.
Long term over short term.
It's really it. And long term, it's much better for you to establish a semblance of a relationship with your father, even if it's not even a fatherly relationship, even if it's just like an amicable,
closure.
Civilized. Like, there's closure now. It's over. You were the bigger person. You turned your cheek. You said, you know what? Do to me what you will. I still love you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. That kind of stance is the ultimate stance to take, especially, and it mends so many future ripples of disruption within the family. It's so important to do that, man.
And I've been really trying to do this because, like, I think, you know, I feel like I go through, you're very outgoing just automatically. I think you can walk into a room and you're just instantly, and maybe you're not, but like, to me, it seems like you just exude this like charisma and like confidence, and like you can talk to anyone, right? Like,
absolutely,
you can talk to a wall. Whereas
I had a very long conversation with a squirrel once. Very, very long, in-depth. It was great.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
But I feel like sometimes I can get, I kind of prefer isolation sometimes. I like just being by myself or being quiet and like observing. And I've tried to force myself more to, when I'm in a conversation, I notice myself sometimes just like wanting to get out of it, or just like being disengaged and being like, yeah, but I gotta go do this thing, and like not really paying attention. Whereas now, I try to remind myself about this book and, you know, really like turn and like just make my body interested.
Sure.
And lean in and like actually engage, make eye contact. And I always feel so much better when I do. And like, I try to just not say anything about myself. I try to ask them questions.
Yeah.
Even if I actually don't give a shit, all of a sudden it just like, it's almost like a psychological trick.
It is.
Right? We talked about like knowing psychology, and like someone, I just ran into someone who was like a lead singer of a band, and he was very annoying and like just obnoxious, and he was like playing his music to me, and it was awful.
Oh, that sucks.
And I was just like, oh, that's really cool. Like, that you seem like really passionate about, like, when did you start singing? And like, he went on. I wasn't really interested, but then all of a sudden, you know, he starts going a little deeper into his life, and he's like, yeah, you know, my dad was a singer. And then all of a sudden I'm interested. I'm like, oh, like, what did your dad do? And like, then it becomes a conversation. And now I feel like I know this guy like really well. So now the next time I see him, we have a friendship and a conversation. And it's like,
oh my God.
He feels lit up.
You observed and built rapport.
Oh, there it is. There it is, baby.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's what the whole podcast is about.
Yeah. That's really all it comes down to, man. I mean, like, it's amazing how I never know where we're going to end up in this show, right? But like, relationships and memories, that's all you have. It's really true. The truth of it. Like, as long as you're being a generally normal person, you're not pissing all your money away on drugs, and like, you're doing the right thing, generally speaking, as long as that's all handled, you really just got to worry about your relationships, and not just like not being a dick. I mean, like, building, like you're saying, like talking to people for real, because it's right below the surface a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I saw a great video of a guy the other day. He was actually in the Oculus. Like, it was so close to where I am every day. And he just goes up to this guy, and he goes, he's in English. He's like, "Excuse me, sir, do you have a dream?" And the guy's like, like, dude, you saw him just like, "Oh, I'm alive. I'm a person." Right. Yeah. And he goes, it was actually really sad. He goes, "No, I'm just trying to put my life back together. Kind of had a tragedy recently, and COVID brought on a lot of internal anguish and loneliness, and I'm just kind of here at the office just trying to build my life back to where it was before this whole thing. And it just a few noises with this guy's mouth just opened this person up to, he was literally, it was so poetic because he was literally just like a background, secondary character in this thing.
Yeah.
And then he just, it could have been anyone. It's New York City. It could have been anyone. He just ran randomly. And this guy just snapped back into the moment and was like, yeah. And then again, the question has nothing to do with it, but it was deep enough to make the guy think and like be vulnerable. And then the guy said to him when he was done explaining, he said, you can do anything you want. You know that. Like, you can do anything.
Wow.
Whatever you want to do, you can do it. And the guy's like, thank you. I needed to hear that today. And like,
That's
whatever.
cool.
And I was like, yeah, that's the humanity that we all are kind of missing nowadays, right? Like, it's a little bit, people are so afraid to just, everyone's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's going through it. You're not special, but that kind of makes you special because you have the ability you can connect with anybody. You just ask them a question how was your childhood? Just ask them that stupid question. And it's funny at first, but then you'll get somewhere. And look, I'm not saying the cashier. I'm saying like, if you're at like a barbecue or you're friends with people, it's like, maybe you're in a situation where your wife's friend has a husband and you don't know what to say to the guy, kind of thing. Just be a little brave.
Yeah.
Be a little brave. Ask him, what's your biggest fear?
It's so cool. And even just like, even through this podcast and like recommending books and stuff and being, sometimes I would be like nervous about, like, am I coming off like weird? Or, like, do people think I'm like nerdy about like talking about these books and stuff, or people judge me? But I get so many,
It doesn't matter.
I get so many messages or phone calls or people who I run into from like high school or coworkers
Yeah.
who are like, hey man, like, and they like pull me aside and they're like, dude, like you've been recommending those books and like, I got to tell you, like, I love those books too. And like, hey, have you read this book? And like, dude, I had a meeting. This one guy at work who I thought I knew pretty well. He literally messaged me one day. He's like, hey, can we set up, like a 30-minute Zoom call? I just want to talk about like books and stuff. And I think it's really cool what you're doing. And I was like, yeah.
Look at that. You see?
And me and him ended up talking, and like he fascinated me. Like he's a huge like Christian. He's got daughters, and he's like, yeah, every night I read them these scriptures. He's like, I noticed a lot of these scriptures, they tie into kind of like the Stoic philosophy stuff too. And it's really interesting. And I love just like imparting this on my girls. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And then I got to know him better. Like I asked him questions about stuff. I got to learn about these scriptures he was recommending to me. So now I'm reading some of those scriptures that he sent me, and I'm like, just that connection right there, like awesome.
Exactly.
So cool. Just from being a little open and vulnerable about something maybe he's shy about. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about his religion at work.
Right.
Maybe I don't want to talk about
it's a
like,
low trust social environment.
Yeah, maybe I don't want to talk about my like Instagram or podcast at work, right? And then the two of us just had this connection through something that we were both interested in. And like
I was just speaking to somebody who wants to pursue, and again, Kyle, by the way, whether people believe it or not, we're inspiring people because like you're saying, like your friends at work, your coworkers, but I know someone now who wants to pursue a social media endeavor of their own, like something that they're interested in and they want to put it out there, but they were afraid, and they were like, Keith, I'm just like afraid of what people are going to say. And I'm like, dude, look, it's not if they talk shit, it's when, first of all.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a bad thing. It does, but it's not, because you just have to, that's part of it. We all pay a price for expressing ourselves. You can't just write a song and expect everyone, the whole world's just going to love it. You're going to win a Grammy. Like, people are going to have something to say. And but again, that is so absolutely part of it that you shouldn't even worry about it. It's like, do you worry about dying every day? Mm-hmm. No, it's gonna happen at some point. You don't even care because it's so, everyone goes in a box.
Yeah.
Everyone gets judged for expressing themselves in public. You can't care about that. You just have to do it. And you just have to, if it makes you happy, just do it for yourself. And it has nothing to do in a way with what other people think or say, right? Like, hopefully they like it, but that's not the goal. Like, who cares if they like it or not? You have something to say, and you want other people, you think it's worth other people knowing about this.
Yeah.
That's really what we're doing here. We hear things and we want to go, fuck, more people should know about this.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
And it's cool. One of the questions that David Brooks recommends asking is one of the questions you asked me on this podcast, which was the Joe's Couch question.
Which one was that?
What would you do if you weren't afraid?
Oh, yeah.
And like, that feels like such a personal question. Imagine just like going up to a stranger and asking them that.
Yeah.
But like that guy in
Do you have a
Manhattan,
dream?
Do you have a dream? Like it's basically the same question.
It is the same.
And like it just feels like when I was reading it, I was like, come on, like no one's just gonna ask like, you know,
Why not?
You're having like drinks with like a coworker and like you just ask, but yeah, why not? And I thought,
why not?
A simple way.
What's gonna happen?
A simpler way to do this too is rather than asking someone like, hey, like, what do you think about the election?
Oh, who cares?
Or like, what do you think about, you know, the Super Bowl and like what Taylor Swift? Instead of asking them like those kind of baseline questions, you can ask them that, but then ask them like, well, how did you come to like have that belief? Or how did you come to think that way? Like, which is way more interesting.
Absolutely.
Like if someone's a Donald Trump supporter, rather than judge them and be like, oh, like, you know, put them in a box of like, oh, well, they must have this belief. Ask them, be like, well, like, when did you start like thinking he was good? Like, how did you come to believe that? And you'll actually find the humanity in them and ask and get much deeper. Yeah. And he talks about, I just posted this in my newsletter, but paradigmatic thinking.
Yeah, I saw
narrative
that.
thinking. So paradigmatic thinking is basically statistical, analytical. So if you're putting together, you know, like a PowerPoint presentation or like a legal brief or just bullet points of like data and statistics, right? Which is typically what you're going to see if you're watching CNN or Fox News or some talk show, versus narrative thinking, which is telling a story, right? Getting deeper, like looking someone eye to eye and having no time constraint and just asking them to tell a story about something. And human beings, obviously, with the Bible being the perfect example, we relate much more to stories than we do to facts.
That's why we like movies. That's why we like books.
Which is why, like, the point of any religious text, it's not for it to be factual. It's to relate the story and the feeling of the story to exude those feelings. So, my engagement with that paradigmatic thinking versus narrative thinking, what I said was that this is why podcasts are so popular.
Yeah.
And why it's just exploding. And like, oh, there's a million podcasts and like everyone's doing a podcast now. And it's like, yeah, because people want to hear other people's stories. People want to hear other people talk. And I hate this bullshit about like, oh, we all have short attention spans.
It's not true.
It's like, no, we don't.
No, it's not true at all.
We have short attention spans because that's what people think and they keep saying. And it's almost like they're like gaslighting us into like, yeah, you have a short attention span.
It's exactly right.
So we're going to make this as short and like punchy and like change the edits every 5 seconds as possible. But someone can sit down and listen to like an Andrew Huberman podcast for 3 hours where he talks about fucking dopamine.
Well, you know? It's like Mark Ladia from Softwood Underbelly. He's like, look, there is nothing more interesting than a person's story. Yeah. No matter who it is.
Softwood Underbelly, which you've talked about a lot, is one of the most
incredible channels,
engaging thing.
It's one of the greatest pieces of media you can watch.
It's uncomfortable and like a lot of it is, you know, edgy to say, for lack of a better term. But
yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like,
look, it's real.
You'll learn more.
Problem.
You'll learn more on Softwood Underbelly than
that's right.
Any book or any like you know,
but
documentary.
He knows. He said, "There's nothing more interesting than a person."
Yeah.
He goes, He said something similar in that. He's like, it's all bullshit. Like this thing that like you have to come up with this great story with a great plot and He's like, just ask someone to tell their story. Anyone, a homeless guy, the president, the guy who works the groceries. It doesn't matter who it is. You will, if you really listen, you will be enthralled. You will be enthralled. It's everyone's story is incredible, and you love hearing it. It's human, like you said.
One of my favorite things was I've been a manager at work, like in the corporate environment, and one of the things I always try to do is to just like, you know, let's set aside some time and not talk about work. You know, I want to get to know the people on my team, so I get to know them better. One of the things we do, it's called a pechakucha, which I think is like a Japanese term.
Sounds it.
I don't know what it means, but the gist of it is basically you create a PowerPoint presentation about your life. And I've reformatted it into my own kind of way that I like to do it. But you basically, each person gets up and the first slide is kind of just like their career history, where they've worked, whatever, just facts about their life, where they're from. The second one is about their family. So, you know, who their parents are, where they live, where they grew up, you know, who their wife or girlfriend or husband or their dogs and stuff like that. The third one is their likes and dislikes. So what are their hobbies? You know, do they like rock climbing? What are the things they hate? You know, do they hate going to the mall? Do they hate, you know, the Marvel movies, whatever it is, like because you learn more about them.
Yeah.
And then the last slide is they have to tell the most audacious, embarrassing story they can. And I challenge them to be like, no, I don't want like you threw up in first grade. I want like a sex story or like a drug. Like I want something crazy.
Right.
And usually I'll go first and I'll tell a story of like my first night in college because I want to set the scene of like, this is the level I want your embarrassing story to be. And we have so much fun doing those because you get to know your coworkers so much better that way.
Yeah.
Like you'll be like, oh, like Samantha, I had no idea. You grew up in the Philippines and then you moved to Hong Kong and also you're into rollerblading. Like that's so cool. Like
rollerblading's making a comeback, by the way.
But like, and like I made friends with this one guy because, he was super into like his favorite movie was Dumb and Dumber. And like this was a guy who was like so quiet and like I thought he was like kind of weird and like I didn't really talk to him much. And then now I know he loves Dumb and Dumber, and I'm like, all right, dude, like you're my guy. Like we're gonna talk all the time. And like you see other people making connections too. Like, oh, you do sewing or you do gardening. Like we should chat. Like follow me on social media. I talk about my plants and like it's.
But you see what I mean?
Exactly.
First of all, we're all the same.
Yeah.
And we kind of forgot that in the last few years because of this low trust. I'm not trying to get all back to the beginning, but like it really is. Like I think that it really is I'm joking when I say I figured everything out. But what I'm saying is I really believe attaching a name to it at least gives people the opportunity to identify this issue in the office or at church or wherever it is. And you can understand, there's this illusion that there's a low trust environment right now. My setting right now is low trust environment, but it's not. Do you feel that feeling of like this kind of like,
there's like a veil.
I don't know if we should, I don't know. But like this exercise that you now have to do because of this, it's necessary. And like, it makes me feel like back in the day, it wasn't always like that, I know that like the office is the office. Doesn't mean everybody was best friends on the first day. But now there is a bit of a timidness attached to opening up. And there's no reason for it.
You know what the perfect example of it is? When I especially feel it in the corporate environment. I don't know if you feel this in any social setting, but when someone brings up like COVID or like,
my God! But that's I think that's what kind of brought it to this point.
Like that's like one of those ones where like you're not sure, you're kind of feeling each other out when someone.
You know what my thing is, dude? I know so much like that. In my opinion, is just like flawless logic about it that I just don't care. I just say exactly how I feel.
Like even my coworker who I thought I knew really well, he's just like, oh yeah, I just got my third booster, and I'm just like,
you're like, oh boy,
okay. I'm just like. And like, but instead,
hey, good for you.
But
who gives a shit.
Instead of me like thinking what I'm thinking and not saying it, what I should have been like was like, oh, like I should have actually probed and asked more questions to get to know him better because maybe he had a good reason, for all I know, maybe not. But I would have gotten to know him a little better if I actually was genuinely interested versus I kind of just judged him immediately and assumed 10 other ththings about him when he said that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I feel like that is a perfect example when you hear someone being like, oh yeah, I took the train this morning. Like, I wore
that's called something too from my readings about social psychology. That thing that you just did there, assuming 10 other things about someone based on one thing is also something that's been deeply studied about, and it causes a lot of cultural tension like when it spreads thin, and that's what COVID did.
Right. Well, it's like
social psychology is like the most interesting thing in the world, especially these days because there's so much so many cultural issues,
and there are
issues.
So many things today that you can, at least in your brain, you can do that logic.
Yeah.
If someone says, oh, I love Donald Trump, you
just add 10 things.
You can jump to conclusions about that.
Absolutely.
Right?
But some of those things are definitely not even true.
No.
That's the truth of it. Let's wrap it up.
Thank you everyone for listening to episode number 18 of Observe and Report Show. Feel free to share this with all your friends. Subscribe to my newsletter, the Observe and Report newsletter. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, all linked in the bio below. Thank you.
Oh my God! Wait a minute. I forgot. This is so important. Music, stop. No, this is so important.
If you've reached this part of the podcast.
Yeah, wait. Okay, thank God. Listen, okay. Quick story. Huge and so important. Remember I told you I got a car?
Yeah.
I had to call Geico and switch the primary vehicle to this new vehicle that I was getting, right? So I call Geico. I'm like, hey, my name is Keith. I blah, 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 policy number, blah, blah, blah. I'm calling for this reason, and I need your help, and I need you to do this for me. The other guy in the phone goes, Hey man, before we do any of these things for you, you need to promise me that you get into radio or broadcasting or something like that, because your voice is incredible. He started giving me this compliment, right? And I was like, wow, thank you so much. But as it turns out, I have a podcast. And he goes, no shit, are you kidding? And this is going on the floor in the dealership. People are laughing now. They're like, what the hell is this guy doing on the phone with this guy? And I'm like, yeah, so it's called Observe and Rapport. We talk about books and like the wisdom and like the whatever and the history. And he's like, that's so cool. He goes, I'm definitely going to check it out, right? And I said, dude, I'm going to give you a shout out next episode. So Cole is
Cole
it
from
Cole?
Geico.
So it's Cole over at Comac Geico. How you doing, pal? I hope you're listening. And if you hear this, you got to leave a comment or reach out or something or share it to your story and tag me. You know, it's all on the thing. I told him about
Cole. Give him a good policy.
I believe it's Cole. Yes, Cole at Geico Comac. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
awesome.
So now we can wrap. I almost forgot. Thank God I didn't forget. So funny. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thanks
Good
for
night,
listening,
everybody.
Cole.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, Cole, and thanks for and dude, my insurance actually went down.
Hell yeah.
Maybe that's why.
Observer Report discount. Maybe we'll do Geico ads next time.
Type in O&R for the discount.
Go to Comac Geico.
Discount code O&R. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, dude, true story. I swear to God, I forgot to tell you.